My name's Enoch Muwonge, 20 years old, and I'm a semi-professional footballer. My first footballing memory, I'd probably say, is Beacons Football Club. I used to play in Shooters Hill. I think I was 4 years old. Used to go there training. Um, that was my first kind of sniff of proper football. I think any young boy at that age is just playing. Obviously, my dad liked football, watched a lot of football. I think that's what grew my interest in the game. Um, but yeah, just for the fun of it, really. My intentions are to be a professional. I think every stage of my career so far is just another step to where I want to go. Um, I have intentions to play in the Premier League. I think like many players who are playing semi-pro are trying to kind of get out of that, make the next step. Um, Obviously, I've been in all different types of environments, whether it's grassroots, academy football, first team football. So I think because I've got a large mix of experiences, I think it's just gonna build me to really just kind of make it out. Again, I'd probably say I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old. Went to Beacons. A few of my friends were there. Um, the manager at the time, Adam Gilligan. Apologies if I said that wrong. But yeah, really cool guy. Spoke to my mum and dad. Told me get down there. At the time, you can see I had the ability, and I was, if I'm being honest, was maybe quite ahead of a few of the other boys. So I'd maybe play with the year above, 2 years above. And again, look, maybe I'm being over the top, but I think that all has a part to play in. And the years after, a few years after, playing with all the players, even now, I'm a semi-pro footballer, so I'm playing with people who have got families at home and whatever. So I think, again, I believe it's all linked. And my first maybe introduction to a professional club was probably Chelsea Development Centre. So they had that down in near Oval, in London, obviously. And I went down there on a Thursday. Went down there, used to train there evenings after school. A few players from there have gone on to obviously do good things. And really and truly, I think that was just me getting exposed to professional environment. Obviously, at the time I was maybe 8 or 9, so I was still quite young. But I did that for maybe 8 months, 9 months, if I remember correctly. Obviously, they had the like FA licensed coaches, so it was getting good training. And obviously, I would take that into. I was still playing Sunday League at the time, so I'm getting that training alongside obviously the Saturday training before the games on Sunday. Obviously, the training sessions weren't like on grassroots at that time, that age. There's not too much instruction, not too much demand on us. Again, like a lot of footballers would say, at that age, you're just really playing just for the love of it, for the joy. I'd probably say when I went on my first academy trial, that was Millwall. Went on trial at Millwall. I actually went on trial there twice. But I remember the first time is like you're on trial, you're there with the boys who I think I was maybe 10, 11. So I'm training with boys who can say, oh, I play for Millwall. And I think that was the first maybe insight for me to want to kind of take this seriously and be a footballer, like the dream of being a footballer. I got, I don't say let go at the time, but they kind of said, oh, I'll come back. Blah, blah, blah. Like, said I've got the ability, but it's more the maturity, because you'd be surprised at that age. There were a lot of the boys, they'd been doing it for maybe even since they was like 8, and you build a type of professionalism that you wouldn't think you'd have at that age. Like, I don't know, getting the equipment after. What else? Obviously, you're not going to training by yourself, but you're going to tell your mum and dad, oh, we need to get there for time, like get there on time, kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's definitely my first academy trial. That's when I really thought, okay, yeah, I want to do this like for the rest of my life. They call it 6 week trials, but obviously my first trial, I wasn't there for 6 weeks. But I think when I went back there, maybe after maybe a couple months, went back there, and then at the time I remember they pulled me into like a meeting room kind of thing with my mum and dad, and obviously one of the coaches, and they just said to me, they can only see me playing in one position at the time, which was either left or right wing, um, and that was their reason of letting me go. So I was quite upset. I remember the time, obviously I was quite young, but I cried to my mum and dad, which is expected. And I think from then I just wanted to kind of prove that I can play academy football. It was hard, I remember, because there was like a gathering at my house for someone's birthday, but I had training in the evening. I've come back. Obviously, you get the uncles and aunties, like, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine, blah, 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 blah. And the fact that I remember this and it was such a long time ago, I think is like was an extra motivation for me, because it's like the next step I wanted to make was to say, oh, I'm playing for this team. And obviously, there's people around my age mates who are playing for these teams, these London teams, Palace, Charlton, Millwall, that I was close with as well. I think at the time, if I'm being honest, it wasn't really a thing where I felt maybe embarrassed, because I saw that opportunity, like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I could possibly get signed here. But I think at that age, you're not gonna really look at someone differently if they've like been rejected at then. Obviously, I think a bit maybe in the later years it might affect me. Obviously, telling my close friends, because I'm still going to school. At the time, I was in primary school, so it wasn't really. I wouldn't say I was felt too down about it. Telling people that I was open about it. The whole point of development centers is to obviously so they're scattered around. In London, for example, there's Palace developments, Charlton developments, Arsenal, Chelsea, all these teams that you can think of, and there'll be some like near your local area. So when I went Tottenham development, it was at Meridian in Charlton, which was just around the corner for me. But again, I'll always show my appreciation for that, because obviously the main reason of the people sending their boys there was because they wanted to get that professional training from the coaches to then push on to get an academy trial. I was 11, 12 when I started going there, and I was there for a few months. I've got 7 months in my head, and I think Tottenham development changed me as a player, matured me as a young player. They invited us down to the training ground in Enfield. We play against the academy, roundhouse tournaments, and you're like, now at that age, it's like you're playing with the boys who are playing for basically a Premier League club at the time. And yeah, I think the training that I got there was very different so when I was at Tottenham Development, I was also at Erith and Belvedere, which was a grassroots team. A few boys from that EMB team went on to go to academy trials like me. And thankfully, while I was doing that training, so that was on a Thursday, I got a scout, went up to my mum. They'd see at the Tottenham event, they'd see me playing for EMB on the weekends, on a Sunday, and just said, that's when they told me that there was a Premier League club at the time that wanted me to go in for an academy trial. And I think my mum and dad will agree as well. I think the Tottenham development training, the training that I was getting, definitely played a massive part in me getting picked up for a trial. I remember the first day I've gone there with my mum and dad. There was training at a school called Harefield, which was kind of linked with the club. So the boys who were signed would most of the boys that were signed would also study school at Harefield and then go to training straight after. Sometimes they'd get let out during class if it was training earlier. And yeah, I was nervous. I was very nervous. The journey wasn't short. It took me maybe an hour and 30 to get there. You can imagine after school as well. So obviously, I was in secondary school at the time, so I was having to travel there after a day at school. And I remember the first day I had to kind of get my head in the zone. Okay, cool, I'm going to trial for a Premier League club here. And I was nervous, and I don't think I performed at my level that first day. Um, so yeah, I think it's never easy. Especially, obviously, I'd been on an academy trial, but that was years before, or it felt like years before. It was completely different. I'm playing with players who like hadn't seen players my age with that ability, um, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. Um, and obviously, I went back there. So I think it was a Tuesday training, Thursday training, if I remember correctly. Um, and after a few sessions, one of the coaches spoke to my parents, and his name was Paul Hardiman, um, and he said it as it was. He said, "Look, the way these trials work, if you're not better than a player that they've already got in your position, there's no point us having you here." Now, obviously, he said, "Look, I've been picked up for a reason, so there's definitely something that they can see in me," and I think that definitely helped and gave me belief because it's like really and truly at the time I think there was only 2 or 3 trialists, um, and I think I just said, "Look, I'm here for a reason. Look, I live far, but it is what it is. Some of these boys are coming from like where I'm coming from, distance wise." So obviously the trial was a bit abnormal. We'd been told that, as in me and my parents, that I was going on a 6-week trial at the club. But that trial went over 2 to 3 months with no answer. Um, in that time, to be fair, I went on a tour. At the time, it was called Oakham Tour. So it was in like Leicester. We played against Millwall, um, Sheffield United, I think it was, a team from Ireland. Um, we stayed there for like a week, like a tournament kind of thing. And I went on that as a trialist, which again was a bit unusual because trialists wouldn't necessarily go on these kind of, you know, tours or tournaments with the club. So that obviously I was on trial for a while, but that was near the end of my trial. So that kind of gave me a bit more belief that okay, maybe these guys might take me on. Um, and by the time I signed, so obviously I eventually signed, I was 13. Um, and obviously it was a big moment for me and my family because it's like only we knew the different hurdles that we had to go through, the different training, the rejections that I'd had in the past. Um, so yeah, it was definitely a big moment for me and my family. Once I'd signed, I knew that okay. So at first it was a year. It was a year. So under 13s, under 14s. There's definitely pressures that I put on myself. Sacrifices had to be made. Not many people know. I've said it before, but my mum, she stopped her job at the time. She was working an agency to take me to training. So obviously I went to school, the John Roan, which was in Greenwich. She'd pick me up from school straight there. We had to beat that Blackwall Tunnel traffic, so it's like we always had to sit in the traffic at the time. And when I was 13, so when I signed, we started training at the training ground in London Colney. So it was a long drive, but I got used to it. And obviously, no, I'm signed. Knowing that I've signed now, if I'm being honest, the journey didn't matter to me. Like I knew that I was going to train and do what I love doing. As a Watford academy player. So yeah, the pressures that I put on myself. Obviously, I was old enough to know that okay, cool, my mum's done this for me, and I kind of wanted to give back. So yeah, like any young player, I'd say. Now I'm a Watford academy player, going to school. As you can imagine, that my friends are proud of me, they're bigging me up, whatever. Um, sometimes I might get the call where like I need to leave school early, kind of thing, to go training. And at the time, like obviously you're gonna feel a bit like, oh yeah, this is like I'm a footballer, which at the time you're not. Like you're an academy player, you're miles away from achieving what it is you've achieved. Obviously, I believe that the achievements along the way are as important as the end hurdle. because without them, obviously, it's not gonna work. I'd signed from 13 to 14, and then my contract got renewed from 14s to 15, and I think that was a real eye opener for me because obviously prior to Watford, like I'd been released or kind of let go before from a club. So when I got renewed and saw that those players around me that maybe they didn't get their I'd say contract at the time. Again, that was another boost for me and confidence booster. Like, okay, cool. This is for me. I'm good enough. Blah 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 blah. Um, Relating back to what Paul said, like you gotta end of the day. Basically said your every training session is a trial. Every game is a trial because you can imagine when I wasn't signed, I was trying to get in. So you can only imagine how many boys is everywhere from all around England trying to get into a Premier League academy at the time. So those pressures, of course, we had trialists coming in every session, like different trialists coming in every session. And as much as your buddy there and you welcome them and everything, you don't want them to take your shirt, kind of thing. And I think those pressures come from early. Obviously, you see it now on TV, where players are playing well and the club spending money to bring someone in. That players like doesn't want that new person to come in and take their shirt, kind of thing. And I think that just filters through down to again under 13s, 14s, 15s, whatever age group. I think the pressures of being at an academy, especially at a young age, I think for myself, because of obviously I can imagine, I don't know these other places, but where I lived, a lot of my friends want to get into an academy. At the time wanted to be where I was in an academy set up. And again, back to what I was saying about the trialists, like there's good players coming in, there's good players in the team already. And another thing at those ages, you might get the odd player that plays up a year. So say those players playing under 14s, playing with under 15s. A few of my close friends now, who obviously were at Watford, some of them were playing at under 15s, were playing with under 18s. So I think there's those little pressures like, okay, cool, you're playing, but your teammate is playing above, so do the coaches rate him over you? Do they trust you to do what he's doing, kind of thing? And I always had these thoughts. I think the important thing is not to not think about others, to think about yourself. I had the opportunity to go on as a sign player, international tours. So my first one was I went to Holland. I think that was the first time I'd left the country to play football. That was an unreal experience for me because I felt like, okay, cool, like I'm really in it now. And at the time we was there with the year above. We played against a team called Aden Ten Hag, I think it was something like that. Might be completely wrong there. But yeah, played in the first team stadium. The team was obviously in the first division in Holland. Obviously we stayed there. Was there for a few days. I also went on a tour to Italy, where we played against Genoa, Udinese, I think I'll throw in there if I remember correctly. But again, there's just those experiences was surreal because it's like the players, they don't speak the same language as you. The refs are not speaking the same language as you. They've got different styles of play. But at the end of the day, you're all playing football. The Italians are known for their brutal and physicality and whatever, and we saw that. There was stronger in their tackles. There was more aggressive. Whereas with Holland, like they like to pop the ball. They like to play on the surface. And I think just experiencing those differences of style of play and whatever at that age, I think was surreal for me. In that Watford team, there's a lot of players that were there that had been there since 7, 8, and they've only known academy football. Whereas I've seen the Marathon Ground and Shooters Hill, where like everyone's just all these Sunday League teams. I could just say games fest. There's games all over. I'm in the under 15 season. Um, all boys my age in academies at that year, in that year, the next step is scholarship. So full-time football. Um, and if I'm being honest, um, I didn't believe I was getting it. Um, all the way, obviously, we knew the date that we was gonna have our meetings and stuff, or the month or roundabout when it was coming. And I didn't think I was getting it, and that was quite hard for me mentally because like I'm going into training, I've got close with these boys. I've known them for like close to 2 years now. But at the end of the day, you know, some of my boys who were the same position and kind of have an idea that one of us might get it, one of us might not, um, was hard. Um, but I think, and I'm of the belief that I was quite lucky. Obviously, it was still in my hands. Um, but if I remember correctly, there was a game we played Bristol, Bristol City away. Um, and by this time, some boys were playing up with the 18s. So with the current scholars, the under 16s would play next to the under 18s. So there'd be two games going on, and sometimes they might grab players. I never actually, by this time, so this is like in the year, well, the months building up to the decisions. I still hadn't played under 18 football, and players had, like my close friends had, and that was hard for me. I remember like I'd go home to my mum and dad and I'd say, oh, like, I'm not getting picked, blah 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 blah, and that's normally an indication. Like there was like maybe 4 or 5 of players that were playing under 18s, and I wasn't one of them. Um, so that that already being said, like your answer's kind of there. Like they're getting the scholar, you're not. But I remember the day there was a player for whatever reason. I don't know if he was ill or had a commitment that he had to go to. He couldn't make the game, so they told me before the game that I'll be going over to play with the under 18s in the second half. So at the time I was playing wing back. I was normally a centre midfielder, number 10, at that time like a number 8 or number 10. Because I was quite quick, maybe off the mark. Um, they pushed me out wide, but at the time I was playing a 3-5-2. So I was playing wing back first half of the 16s, and then if I'm being honest, that whole half I was just thinking about the second half, knowing that I'm going over to the 18s game. I don't know if I'm gonna be coming on straight away. I don't know if I'm even gonna come on, but I knew that I was gonna be on the bench. So anyway, the half finished, and I was nervous. I was very nervous. I don't remember the score at the time, but I've gone into the changing room, got my number. It was like one of those high numbers, that are number 16 or something like that, and they've told me I'm coming on as a 10. So that was obviously a surreal moment for me. But I remember the 16s hadn't played. I hadn't played number 10 in the 16s for a while. While I was playing wing back in the formation that we were playing. So I had to just mentally just prep myself, and I was very nervous, and I just didn't want it to affect my performance in that game. And I think I showed myself in that when I came on for the 18s. I played well. The gaffer, there was two, but there was like proper trust with me during the game, egging me on. The players were egging me on. I was getting on the ball. I was beating men, playing on limited touches but keeping it moving. And after the game, I left the pitch and I was proud of myself. They was all really happy with me. And all of a sudden, that something switched in my head. Like, right, I can actually play under 18 football. I'm playing with boys 2 years older than me. Obviously, I was a bit smaller than them, so I had to move the ball quicker. Blah 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 blah. The game's finished. My 16s coaches had heard how well I played. They were chuffed with me. My mum and dad didn't come to this, because obviously it was quite far. I was in Bristol, but I remember telling them over the phone. They was happy with me. We had my 18s debut. I remember put on like my Snapchat, whatever. Then the next week, 18s were playing Cardiff at home, and I'd been told that I was involved in the squad. So I didn't play 16s. Obviously there was a 16 game, but I didn't play. I was just strictly on the bench for the 18s. I remember I came on. It was 2-2 at the time, 2-2 or 1-1, and there was a corner, and obviously when it gets to 18s, they do the set pieces. It gets proper from there. So the set piece rolls, you know where you are on the set piece, whether it's defending or attacking. And I was front post, and we had a corner, and he's crossed it in, and I've got around the front post, flicked it on, scored, and all of a sudden, like I've run back. I'm kind of in disbelief, like I've actually scored my 18th goal on my second game. And obviously in my head I'm thinking, raw, like I've scored on the 18th game, and it was surreal for me. Obviously, a lot of my friends or teammates had played 18s football, so the pressure of actually playing there was not really, or I don't want to talk for them, but maybe they was more used to it than me. So it was a big 3 points for us. Obviously, we finished the game, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's just, you can imagine, like, over the moon. Say you've done something like that, your next session, you know that people are going to be talking about it. The coaches are going to be talking about it, because it's a proud moment for the coaches as well, like the under-16 managers that, are training you and playing you, because they'll feel like their job is to, at the end of the day, every club's job is to build the academy and get the players to play as high as possible and boost them up the age groups. So fast forward the next week, we're playing against Ipswich, at home, and I'm starting. So I've started, and I remember only one. So one of my boys who was my age was playing. He started left back, and I started in the 10. A few of the boys were on the bench, and again, it's like the last 3 weeks have just maybe been a turnaround for my career, the next step, getting a scholar. And I think the most important thing was I believed in myself. I believed that the coaches believed in me, the players believed in me. And obviously at the time I'm 16. Like, I'm not full-time yet, I'm playing with the full-time players. Game started, and then I've scored a header to go 1-0 up. And again, it's like, wow, like I've actually scored again. Like, I wouldn't have thought it. That the fact that I'm even starting, got my first start. Then I've scored the first goal. I came off like the 60th minute, and it was 1-0, and I was just thinking, like, imagine how we win this, and I've scored the goal, blah 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 blah, whatever. And you can imagine I was over the moon. And I think those 3 weeks were the critical moments for me that basically resulted in me getting my scholarship at Watford. So the day of the decisions, obviously it was after school, because everyone was in school, and they sent like a timetable out, so that people had different slots, like a parents' evening, and I was nervous. I've gone in, I'm with my mum and dad, my brother and sister. There was I think 4 coaches around the table, the 2 under 18s coaches, my under 16 coaches, and I think at the time the head of the academy was there. So it was quite nerve-wracking, like everyone's around the table, and obviously me, my mum and my dad. And the meeting was probably maybe 15-20 minutes. And obviously during that time they've revealed that obviously they're going to offer me a 2-year scholar at the club. And I think once they mentioned that, everything else was not going over my head, but I'm just kind of thinking like, wow, like I'm going to be a full-time footballer. Like, I can't wait to tell my friends, I can't wait to tell everyone. Now I'm going to be going out to stay in Watford, full-time training. Obviously my age mates had different aspirations. Some people go into sixth form or college or whatever, and if I'm being honest, that wasn't really my speciality. They did say in the meeting that, with my recent performances, that kind of swayed their mind, because it was going to be a difficult decision if obviously those last few games didn't happen. I'm sort of the belief that everything happens for a reason, because say that the boy who didn't make that game against Bristol was there, I would have just been playing under that game for the under 16s, and like all of a sudden now I've been called over there, played well. Next game I've scored the winner. I've come off the bench. The next game I've started, I've scored. It was like a film. It was all just happening. Like, it didn't seem real. My mum and dad are over the moon. Told my whole family. Like, I've posted it on my Insta, on my Snap. Like, everyone's just going crazy. I had school the next day. So I was just buzzing I was buzzing to go to school.
Yo, Enoch, it's Ursh. I heard you got a 2-year scholarship at Watford. I'm happy for you, bro. I'm waiting for you to come to Arsenal.
Obviously, after the decisions, we still was training for like a month or two or a couple months. So like I'm training like, obviously what was quite hard at the time was some of my close friends didn't get the scholar. So it's like you don't know if you're still training with them, that they're still training until that kind of contract is finished. Some boys went on to other clubs, so some boys stopped training. But yeah, again, that's when it felt like, okay, cool, like I'm a footballer, like I'm actually a footballer, and I'm gonna do this properly.
Hey yo, Enoch, congratulations, my bro. There's bad days in there, but yeah, sending you love. Keep doing your thing, yeah.
Listen, man, like Enoch, yeah, my G. I heard you just batted it up. Yeah, got your scholarship to Watford, yeah. Say no more. Yeah, keep batting it up, yeah. Congratulations. Go celebrate and back to work, yeah. Done your love.
Now that I'm full time, traveling full time, meaning I'll have to report in the morning, like around 7:45, 8 o'clock, and to do that every day from my house was just nearly impossible. Like I'd be getting up at like 6 o'clock every day, getting back home at like 5 o'clock. Like it just wasn't practical. So I went into digs. So basically you just stay in a host accommodation, so you stay with a family. That's not too far from the training ground. There was a minibus that picked up all the boys that were in digs, so there was like pickup points at different pickup times. So my first digs I was staying with one of my close boys. So we stayed together. Like I had a room, he had a room upstairs, and obviously the lady would feed us and stuff. But I think the surreal thing for me was, obviously I'm basically moving out at 16, which was like not normal for someone to do at that age. While I was in digs, obviously lockdown was happening, or COVID was happening, and they started putting the lockdowns into place. And me and my boy, I don't want to say stuck because it sounds like it was like a toxic environment, but we was basically stuck in the digs. We weren't training at the time, but we had to stay there. And then it got to, maybe it was there for like 3 weeks maybe. And then they let us go home. They used to the club sent us like running to do, so we had to do like 5Ks or something, or to keep ourselves up to kind of the fitness. They'd send programs for us to do at home. So obviously now we're full-time players, but we're under 18s. So I've just turned 16, but I'm in the same age group as the players the year above and the year above that. So it's like there was basically like 2, maybe 3 age groups in that under 18 squad, which meant that it was harder to get into the team. There's players who have been doing the full-time stuff for 2 years, a year, so they're already ahead physically. I'd say mentally they're more mature, and they're not at the club for no reason. Like, they was good footballers. So I think there was definitely pressures there of, okay, cool, how do I get into this team? I was getting left on the bench a lot of games, and you have to learn to just accept that you have to earn the right to play. You're a younger player now. All of those thoughts and whatever, they built me as a person, like as a player, but as a person as well, like knowing patience and stuff. And again, you're there every day, you're training with them every day. Obviously I'm getting paid now, so in that 2 years you get paid, so you're getting paid for something that you love doing. And for our age at the time, it was a decent amount of money. So it's like you're able to kind of buy the stuff that you want to buy, that you kind of wanted to buy in school and stuff. The shoes, the track suits, whatever. I remember I I just bought a phone and some AirPods. Like, that's one of my first buys, and I was like, oh, like I've done that myself. Like, you're paying your own phone contracts, all these little things that you're able to do, because of you're playing the game that you love. And yeah, as a whole, the Scholar, there was a lot of up and downs. There's a lot of up and downs in the Scholar. Obviously, after the first year, you know, you're now one of the older players. So there's the younger players coming in. So now the coaches expect different things from you. Obviously you've had a year. I'd had a year in full-time football, so you know you learn punctuality. Like if you wake up late in the morning and you miss your minibus, you're gonna have to find a way to get to training, whether it's pay for an Uber or you're gonna be late. And you know they would let you know if you're late. There'll be consequences and stuff. It built a lot of life skills for me. So obviously similar to when I was talking about under 16s period of not knowing if you're going to get the scholar or not. Obviously the pro contract was the next step after the scholarship. Again, I think there was more pressure in that period as a scholar because, you know, some boys got offered a contract when they were 17. So after their first year scholar, they was getting a early pro, which would mean that, you know, they'd finish off their scholar but know that they've got a pro afterwards. Another thing, there was under 23s football, so some 18s were playing with the under 23s. And for me, I wasn't fortunate enough to play a lot of under 23s football. Like, I hardly played any under 23s football. Obviously, there was FA Youth Cup, which you play as a scholar. So when I was 16, you know, I was in the squad against Fleetwood away. But I didn't end up coming on. But at 16, it's like I travelled up there. We stayed over as well, overnight stay. So that was just surreal for me. Like, I didn't really care if I didn't go. Obviously, I wanted to play, but it's like the fact that I was in that experience was already good for me. Then the next year, you know, I'm a first year scholar, and I was luckily involved in the FA Youth Cup squad. I don't remember the first round, but I remember the second round of the Youth Cup that we played in was Newcastle away. So we played in St James's Park. I remember I came on like maybe 65th minute, won a penalty, we scored it, and that made it 2-2 in the game, and that sent us to extra time. Obviously we lost to a free kick in like the 119th minute, so it was going to penalties and we lost. But again, that was another experience for me. I think the second year scholar was, so obviously I'm 18, that was definitely probably the hardest year of football for me, like up until now, because by that time there's already players that know that where their futures kind of lie for the next year or year and a bit. Obviously me, I was still waiting for the decision. Again, players are playing 23 football, some players are playing international, so they've been called up for the international teams and whatever. And I think that was definitely hard for me because I wasn't getting picked for these games. So anyway, fast forward to the decisions. I think at that time you kind of get an idea if you're getting a pro or not, because by those times it's a bit more cutthroat. Like, you know, okay, if you're not getting picked for 23s, why are they going to give you a pro if they don't trust you to play with the older group now? And yeah, so I didn't get my pro, and I think that was a real kick in the teeth for me. Can't remember. Obviously, my mum and dad have come up for the decisions. We kind of knew that for me to get one, I'd need a kind of a lot of the coaches on my side, kind of thing. So anyway, they've come to the ground similar to the decisions for the scholar, and they've just told us that they're not gonna offer me, and that was really hard because obviously I'd been full-time for 2 years. I knew that a lot of my boys were going to be getting it. Yeah, that was really hard. I remember, and at the time obviously I was in digs. And when the decisions were, the season wasn't finished, so like obviously you was free to kind of explore other clubs and stuff, but at the end of the day my contract was still running until maybe a month or 1.5 months later. You know, they told me in a meeting, you know, you can have a few days off. Like, you don't have to come in tomorrow morning, kind of thing. You can go back home rather than go back to your digs. And I remember I was with my mum and dad. I went back to my digs. Obviously, told the digs lady at the time the news. She was really upset for me. I decided that I was gonna go in the next day because I felt like there was no benefit for me to go home and dwell. Like I might as well just come in and get on with it, kind of thing. Um, so my mum and dad were quite surprised. Like they was saying that I should come home and just like reflect with them, whatever. But I decided I'll stay. And I remember obviously when I said bye, and then I've gone in. The digs lady asked me, "Do I want to eat?" I was like, "No, I'm alright, thank you." Gone up to my room, and I remember, so I've sat there, put my bags down, sat on the bed, and I remember just breaking down. Like I was just breaking down crying. Like I was proper crying. That's the first time I'd cried like proper in a while. And I was just thinking like what am I gonna do? Like I have to find a club. If I don't find a club, I'm 18. Like I need to make money somehow. Like am I gonna have to get a job? What am I doing? There's just a lot of thoughts going on. And at the same time, I know that I've got to go training tomorrow. Like I'm getting paid to see out my contract, so I have to go training tomorrow. That's what I felt like. But after the cry, like I'm not gonna lie to you, I felt better. I remember I went on FIFA, was playing against my boys. Obviously, we all had our decisions, but we all kind of knew who was getting it, who wasn't. We spoke about it. It was like, it was obviously it was a bit sad, like obviously knowing that. And obviously, I think the group that we had was proper close. Like even now, we have a group chat where we're all like we see each other as brothers. Obviously, I was proud for the ones that got it and they deserved it and whatever. And I was there in training the next day. I remember the coach coming to me saying like, "Oh, like E, like you've come in, like well done, like that shows a lot about you, whatever." And then yeah, so the club, Watford, had held like a few, not exit trials, but a game like a showcase game. So where a lot of teams would come down to watch. If there'd be agents there, and a lot of teams would come down to watch because they know that all the players that are playing are basically free agents. They're gonna be free agents in the summer. And yeah, I remember I went on trial at Oldham while I was training. Went down there. A family friend lived like in Manchester, so I stayed with them. My mum went up there as well, stayed with them. Actually, my mum and dad, we both all went up there, stayed up there, went training. Didn't really like it there, if I'm being honest. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because it was far or I'm not too sure, but it just wasn't the right thing for me. Anyway, I've gone back, and then the season's done. You know, I've said my byes. All the boys have said our byes. You know, just kind of not knowing that you're not coming back there was hard. And it's like, and then back to the pressure thing. Like for the last 2 years or even more than that, like everyone's known me as the footballer. Like everyone at home, school, my boys like in it, like who live near my house at home, thinking, like yeah, football. And you think Enoch, you think footballer, and obviously that I knew that. As of now, that was not me. Like I was just like everyone else, kind of thing, and that was hard for me to take. But again, I had good people around me. I had someone like a mentor. I'll call him a mentor, but I saw him as family. Like he helped a lot. And you know I had people someone sorted me out at trial, so I went on trial at Reading. But again, that was hard because after 2 sessions, I did my MCL, so I tore my MCL. No, I sprained my MCL. So that was a kick in the teeth. Then it's like, okay, cool. I didn't really have security behind me, as in a club that can help me go through physio and everything. Like I was just kind of in the mud. Like, okay, cool. I'm at home. Like, what do I do here? They've said, Reading said that I can come back after. I've healed, so I was out for like 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I've come back. I was there for a day, and then you know the coach messaged me after and said, like a few players have come in the time that we're not going to take you on. So that was a hard one to take. So I think those few months of like, let's say, rejection was hard, but I think that definitely built me as a person. And this is where it all kind of changed for me because I got in contact with someone that I knew in the non-league kind of system. Got in contact with him. He was a coach at Welling 23s, and once I was like kind of back fit at because I didn't have a schedule. Obviously, I wasn't training, so I was just at home. So I asked, can I come down and for a few training sessions? I'm not training anywhere. I kind of want to get a routine going. Obviously, at the time I wasn't working, so I'm kind of like at the time relying on the savings from when I was at Watford and whatever. So I've gone into training with him at Welling 23s. Then they've registered me so I can play some games in like the league then the 23s league for like kind of non-league. They had teams like Aldershot in there, Dartford, Bromley, so these kind of teams were in there. And then after a few months, the first team called me up for a cup game against Cray Valley. I played in that, started it, played quite well, to be fair. And yeah, I think from then that was a eye opener that after academy football there is still a pathway. I think a big thing for that step in my career there, I think, was adapting to the non-league system and everything not being as structured and I'd say professional. So obviously after a few months I was the next season, a new manager's coming at Welling and he's kind of taken to the youth, so he wanted to bring the young players up, and he gave me an opportunity. Told me, look, no pressure, but you're rated at the club sees you as like part of the future plans, and that was my kind of first year of men's football. He integrated me into the team. I got an injury at the start of the season, but like literally the start of the season, but maybe after a few, like 4 or 5 games, came into the squad, made my debut in the National League South against Eastbourne away. That was again a proud moment for me and my family. A young player playing in the National League South, like that was a big thing because obviously you're playing with people who have got families at home that they're playing to feed their families at home. Like it's different from the academy. Like 3 points is a must for them. As a young player and a new player non-league, like it's not a lot of money. So I had to find a job on the side. I'd worked in a restaurant. I'd done warehouse. I'd worked in a warehouse. I've done deliveries with my dad. Done a few cleaning jobs with my mum, my uncle. I've had a few appearances in that season. I've scored a few goals. Scored my first senior goal. Scored an FA trophy. And yeah, like all of these little things for me were proud moments myself. Adapting to playing with bigger men. Obviously, I'm not the biggest of players, so I had to, find a way to kind of adapt and get through that. And then yeah, so the next season, back end of that season, the new managers come in, change of philosophy, and I didn't really fit into his plans moving forward. There was about maybe 7-8 games left of the season, so I've gone on a dual registration to Cray Wanderers, which was the level below, so Ishmi and Prem. Played a few games there, to the end of the season. I got scored a couple goals, got a few assists again, but I'm playing men's football. That's the most important thing at the time for my age. Then obviously this new season, I decided that I would part ways with Welling. Mutually agreed that with the gaffer. He was really honest with me, and we spoke, and he said he'd heard how well I'd done on the dual reg at Cray, but I said, look, I wanted that. The most important thing for me was playing and getting minutes, so I went with Cray pre-season. Then because of a few political reasons and stuff inside the club, I then left Cray Wanderers at the start of the season, and I went on to sign for Whitehawk this season. So I played a couple pre-season games for them against Worthing and Maidstone, which are obviously National League South teams. Whitehawk is Ishmi and Prem as well, the same as Cray Wanderers. But I think the most important thing for me was, in this whole thing, was just kind of acknowledging and understanding that after getting released, like there's so many different paths and ways to still make it. And like me sitting here now, I believe that, you know, I'm obviously closer to making it as a pro than I was when I got released and when I got signed. And I think all of the rejections and you know, the contract renewals, like it all kind of, I believe it's just part of my story. Like it's gonna be different to, like, a lot of my boys are playing in the leagues, in the Prem, in the Champ, League One, League Two, like they're playing, like and I just believe that it's just, when it's your time kind of thing. So I think for me, I think my genuine love for the game, like, will keep me going alone. The different goals that I have, obviously, look, all players will have different things that they want to achieve. Obviously, I've stated what I want to achieve. I want to play at the highest level of football, and I still have those beliefs that I will, even if I get to 27, 28, and I still haven't, like it's happened before, so that it can happen again. I think at the moment, I think the most important thing is that I'm playing and I'm enjoying my football. With non-league football, like, it makes you, obviously there's a lot of boys that, or men that I've spoken to, that have kind of taken me under their wing because they've done it before. Like, they're 5-10 years older than me, and they speak to me every day about what it takes to get through the battles in non-league, because it is so different to academy. And if I was to go back to academy, I think definitely do more work outside of it. And I know that sounds like quite a hard shift to do, because obviously I was full time, and, you know, I'm finishing at 4:00 and I'm starting at 7:30, 8:00. But, you know, what I've realised is it's the extras that kind of take you past everyone else that you're training with. And I think I learned that the hard way, because I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing my extras as I should have been. And unfortunately, you get left behind. I honestly think the most important thing is actually playing, because, and especially now, like, a lot of professional clubs are looking further down. So they're looking at grassroots, they're looking at step 6, step 5 football, step 4 football, like down the leagues of English football. And a lot of people are getting picked up, like Prem teams, Champ teams, like Football League teams are picking up players from non-league. So I think the most important thing is just playing. Just make sure you're playing. Like, even for me now, I just need to be playing. It doesn't actually matter what level, as long as I'm playing where I know that people are watching. Don't pressurize yourself and look at others. I think that's another thing, because if I look to others, like I'm playing in non-league football, like step 3 football, step 2 football, but some of my age mates, my friends who I was actually training with, are playing on TV. Like, I'm watching them play. So I think if I just looked at them and judged myself off them, like, I'll get nowhere. Like, there'll be no benefit for myself. So I just think the most important thing for me is just believing that my journey is my journey, and I'll be successful in my own way.